Now, you know, the floods this year did not just affect Thailand, Cambodia, the Philippines, Vietnam. This is a phenomenon of climate change, and that's another big discussion we need to have with Thailand. We've just concluded a very successful discussion in Durban. But Thailand still has not committed itself to tangible emission targets, and we want to work with Thailand to achieve that. So there's a big picture of Thailand showing the world that it is joining the climate debate in a serious way. That's number one. The second thing really is that I've always said that, you know, Thailand is a big player in ASEAN and indeed in global affairs, and much of Thailand's foreign policy over the last 5-6 years has been driven by internal politics and almost an inwardness in Thailand. Thailand should be more global and take up these big issues of maritime security, of climate change, of free trade, and making sure the WTO process finishes. And if Thailand is a force for good within ASEAN, and it should be, working with the other partners, it should be treated as an equal with the bigger economies and be a part of the solution for the economies that need to catch up. And I hope that in the years ahead, Thailand will be more assertive in ASEAN, but a force for good.
So your recommendation for Thailand is to look beyond ourselves to see how the global economy or how global society is moving on?
Yes, to reflect what Thai people are already doing. I think the government is falling behind its own people. Thai people, businesses are global, they're traveling, they're going out and about. In the UK we had 20% more visitors from Thailand. Why is that? Because Thai people already see the world as their neighborhood. But Thai politicians have somehow forgotten that, and that needs to change.
How do you see internal politics, the conflict going on for the past nearly 1 year that you have been ambassador in Thailand?
Yes. What has struck me is that when you talk to individual politicians, they have good intentions, they have their vision, but somehow or other it doesn't quite surface as when you see the wider political debate. The debates are sometimes very technical about small issues, about this article, this reform, micro issues. The big picture, I think, is somehow missing, and part of that, I think, is about ideology. And quite often I ask, what is your fundamental principle? What do you want? Do you want liberty? Do you want freedom of the individual? Do you want communal action? And these are all big debates that other politicians have in other countries. I think there's a great need here for reconciliation in its biggest sense, of people really putting aside some of the smaller petty differences and really look at the big picture of what this country actually needs. And you really don't have the luxury of standing still right now. You have competitors all around you in ASEAN, China, India, the bigger nations. And there are many things that need to be addressed here. Health services, infrastructure, access to credit, making individuals more prosperous, dividing the wealth in such a way that the divisions are not as stark as it is now. I think there's a big gap between the very rich and the not so rich.
Yeah. Have you ever mentioned those of your concern or those of your points to any Thai politicians?
Almost every day. I saw.
Really?
Yes, I've met politicians here from the opposition, from the smaller parties, from the government. That is a very constant discussion that we actually have.
Have you been questioned what colors are you? Because you are in Thailand, you must have understood Thai politics.
Yes. And in a way, I think I've always said I'm a rainbow.
Every color.
Every color, because there's space for every color, provided people are working within the institutions. But it's when the colors are divisive or confrontational, that's when I think color politics is perhaps less helpful than it would be. But I'm a great fan of good political debate, of ideological conflict, where people are sort of saying my vision is better than your vision, and then ask the people of Thailand to decide. Equally, if you're in opposition, the tendency, not just in Thailand but in many other countries where democracy is still evolving in some ways, is the politics of overthrow. The opposition see their role as finding the first opportunity to throw the government out. Our view is it's better to allow the government to serve its full term and let the people decide.
talking about the royal wedding, to what extent has it boosted up popularity of royal family among British people?
No, well, I think the royal wedding was a great occasion for the British people, and indeed globally, people really enjoyed the celebration. And next year we also have the Diamond Jubilee of the Queen, 60 years of her reign, and there'll be huge celebrations behind it. And if you look at throughout our recent history, we look at a monarchy that has had to renew itself, connect with its people, modernize. We have Her Majesty the Queen using the internet, accessing Buckingham Palace. We have Prince Charles picking up causes like the environment and bringing less fortunate communities within the UK into employment and business through business in the community. You have the Duke of York being a very good ambassador for Britain in terms of trade and commerce, and that role will continue. You have Princess Anne working for charities like Save the Children and having previously been an Olympic athlete herself. So I think through all of these different ways, our royal family is communicating and reaching out, but also changing itself. You know, our royal family is accountable for the amount of money they spend. The budget is transparent. Princess Anne was once famously issued with a speeding ticket. She paid.
So everything has to be revealed, has to be transparent,
Yes.
all the expense.
Yes. And they are also sharing the austerity. The budget is a little bit smaller than it was before.
Yes, I just read in the news that the income of the Queen will be frozen until 2015.
Yes, that's because my income has been frozen too, as civil servants and others, and quite rightly so. I think it is the royal family's way of showing that they're not immune from the economic difficulties we face.
Looking back in the past 10 years, how the status of the Queen has changed?
I think if you look back, and some of it was very apparent, you know, if you remember the time when Princess Diana was tragically died in the accident, there was a somehow mood, you know, was the Queen going to come out? Was she going to participate in this national sense of bereavement? And I think there was a realization that something had happened. And there came a moment where that whole thing changed again, and she was out and about talking to people, empathizing with people. I think the language that our royals use is changing, and partly it's because our royals, and I've worked with Her Majesty the Queen on overseas travels, particularly in Nigeria for a 4-day period, so I've seen at close quarters. What she does, and many other members of the royal family do, is they break away from this attempt by the entourage, the court officials, to almost control everything.
They have freedom to be independent.
Not just freedom to be independent, but they said, look, we don't need all this formality. We don't need people to worry about how to curtsy and how to bow and how to do this. Let's have a conversation.
They can just say so.
Whatever they want. And they enjoy normal conversation with normal people. And quite often it's not the individual royal who insists on these things, it's the people who are working around them. And I think there are lessons in that for every royal household around the world.
It's perhaps quite difficult to draw parallel with the Thai royal monarchy, but with the controversy of lèse-majesté law, what do you think of it?
I've traveled all around Thailand, and I've dealt with Thailand now for 8 years, most of it from London. But when I travel around here, I went to the hill tribes, I've been to Surat Thani, I've been to Ubon Ratchathani, many other places, and lived in villages. I've seen ordinary Thais as well as people in Bangkok. The one thing I'm absolutely certain of is that the affection for the king is widespread, is natural, and it's genuine. And in some ways, he almost doesn't need defending. And I think if you look back, he has said so himself many, many times. What has become unfortunate is the politicization of this issue. People are trying to prove that they're even more loyal. And therefore, people are falling over each other to do things. But it's actually, I'm not sure that any of that helps. So my message is that there needs to be very little to ensure that people love the king, because they do. If there is resentment is growing, it's the people who are insisting through some very strange measures that should continue. I think there's a natural affection there, and for future generations, they need to earn the same affection.
But for the debate of for and against Lise-Majesté law, do you think for a healthy society, should it be carried on?
The UK believes in the very general principle of freedom of expression. We also believe that individual members of the royal family should not be insulted. There should not be, disrespect in a way which is completely unwarranted and would be wrong. But what we think, and this is in line with His Majesty's own wishes, there should be a debate about the role of the monarchy, the constitutional position, what they can do, what they can't do, what role can they play when there is a need for reconciliation, or if there's a big crisis, as we have in the UK, every now and then the Queen may need to arbitrate if there is a complete political impasse. She's done so in the wider Commonwealth before. So I think in that sense, there are dangers. And then what you actually have, which you're having now, is a situation where sometimes unintentionally or vulnerable people are targeted and the laws are very strict. And in some ways, some of the sentencing can be quite disproportionate to what people may have been alleged to have done. And that, I'm not sure, helps the image of the monarchy longer term. And I'm not entirely sure that that's what the monarchy actually wants.
You must have felt the sense of how Thai people are quite sentimental over this issue, especially on the argument over the website of the US Embassy. Does the UK Embassy have the same plan to open web board for people to share comments on any discussion?
We have lots of discussions face to face as well as through our own Facebook account. I have my own Twitter account. So people can talk to us about whatever issue they want. But I agree with my colleague, the US Ambassador, that the discussion should be respectful. Respectful of each other's opinions, and certainly should not become abusive in any way. There's no debate need never be abusive in that sense, because then you've almost lost the argument before you've made the argument.
เป็นความเห็นที่จะต้องรับฟังนะคะสำหรับท่านทูตอาซิฟอามัดเอกอัครราชทูตอังกฤษประจำประเทศไทยค่ะที่ด้านหนึ่งก็สะท้อนบุคลิกความเป็นคนอังกฤษนะคะกับความสุภาพและพูดจาแบบตรงไปตรงมาโดยเฉพาะปัญหาความขัดแย้งทางการเมืองที่เกิดขึ้นในไทยบอกว่าเป็นห่วงนะคะและต้องการให้คนไทยก้าวข้ามจุดนี้ไปให้ได้เพื่อที่จะคงบทบาทความเป็นประเทศไทยอยู่ในเวทีระดับภูมิภาคและเวทีระดับโลกต่อไปค่ะและทั้งหมดคือตอบโจทย์สำหรับคืนนี้ดิฉันณัฐฐา โกมลวาทินสวัสดีค่ะ